right. Right, we can do this. So. This is, for those of you guys that haven't seen this before, this is the Science of Wellbeing Coursera course from Yale. And it is, like, for anybody who wants to experience, like, improved well-being or just more happiness in your life, less stress, less whatever crap that you have to, like, kind of just contend with day to day. This is a really good place to come for information. It's currently free because of the pandemic. Yeah, exactly. Beautiful hair lady. I know, right? Just take her hair, put it on my head, make me happy. Or duplicate her hair. That's like really morbid. I'm just picturing a lot of morbidity. Anyways, side note. Yeah, so it's a really good free source to be like, I want to know a summary of all of the best shit that positive psychology has discovered about how to live a better, happier life. It's all here, and we've been like just gleaming insights off of it. And one of the main things we've been looking at is all of the ways our brain tricks us into wanting things that don't actually make us any happier. And we've looked at that in relation to like our jobs. We've looked at it in relation to grades, which really just applies to any skill that we're trying to get better at or we care about getting better at. And now we're gonna watch a video, it's on the shorter side, about kindness and how kindness fits into this idea of miswanting. I have not watched it, so we get to discover it together. And yeah, let me turn up the volume for you guys so you can hear it. Without further ado, I'll pause the music and we'll check this out and just see. I might pause it, add pithy thoughts, rambling thoughts to it, whatever.
Now we're going to do, I think, even the more interesting
You
thing,
love me, you're going to enjoy it.
The kind of stuff we should be wanting, but we don't even know that we want yet. For the most part, when I kind of asked you guys at the beginning, what are the kinds of things that would make you happy? For the most part, these things were left out. Although there are some seeds that folks got it right, so that's good. Some of you are onto something here. But what's the stuff that we're just totally missing? One of the things, just a reminder, it's not this stuff. You keep seeing that, but it's still, it's good to mess with your own forecasts many, many times, which I keep repeating these things, like, because you still think you want some of this stuff, but you don't. Okay, so what is the good stuff? What are we not wanting because we don't realize we should want it? One of the things that consistent work shows we should be seeking out more is opportunities to act more kindly to one another. No. We should be seeking out opportunities to do acts of kindness. Sounds less like the thing that you're miswanting is telling you than getting a grades and getting a high salary, but it turns out this has much more happiness bang for your buck, just simply doing kind things. Again, it sounds like a cheesy like Hallmark card or like the kinds of things like your grandmother sends you in like bad fonts over Facebook or something like that, but it turns out lots of empirical evidence is suggesting that simple acts of kindness bring us happiness. How do we know this? Well, the first thing we know is that if you just look at people who are happy versus people who are not happy, and you try to see, okay, what's the difference between those two? As we saw, it's not salary, it's not being married or not, it's not all those things. But what it does seem to be is how many simple acts of kindness they do themselves that they notice in the world and that they pay attention to.
So, okay, pause for a second, because what I absolutely love about this is it's saying, like, being kind is a really positive, selfish act. Like, you can choose to be kind simply because it is good for your well-being and not because it's good for other people. And that's totally a legitimate reason. No judgment. I love that. I get all the time like philosophical arguments about how there's no such thing as an altruistic act, right? Like we're all self-centered, selfish creatures. And like this just to me explains why that's okay, because it actually can work in everybody's best interest, right? I just love it. I love it. Yeah, like it feels good, right? Like there's an enjoyment there, SS. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I guess I'm pausing because I have a lot of girlfriends who are, and I think like I'm going to talk in like total generalities that I have like no right to talk in really, but like I know, like, here I go. I know that there are a lot of women in America that are raised to, like, culture raises them to be like, hey, the epitome of womanhood is selflessness. So there's a lot of like acts of kindness that are coming from like a cultural dictate that can just exhaust women. So they're being kind, but maybe they're not experiencing the boost of it feeling good. You know? So that's, I guess, now I'm like being critical of this, but that might be like a caveat. I don't know. I really digress. You do disagree. Selflessness is real. Ooh, Charlie, bring it. Yeah, like that's I experience it as a duality too, SS. Like I definitely am motivated in part because I genuinely care about other people and I want them to suffer less, right? And I can't deny that I'm also motivated because it feels good. It feels good to be useful, to cheer somebody up or whatever, right? Like it just feels good. So I experience it as both. And yet, Charlie, I have also experienced what feels like selflessness. And I, especially around animals, like I live on a really busy street, and in my neighborhood, people aren't the best at keeping their dogs secure in their yards. So there have been dogs that have been loose on this really busy street, and I have put literally, like, I will, like, it drives Yeti Dude absolutely insane, but I have definitely run into traffic to save a dog. Like, I don't even think about it. Like, I definitely look to make sure I can pull it off, and, like, I've so far I've judged correctly, but I put myself at physical danger to get the dog. This is in point, like, this is my case in point. Like, I lost my finger that way. Here, I don't know if you can see it. That was like it felt like a selfless act. Like, I just had to save the dog. I didn't think about my own safety. And I've done it more than one occasion. So, yeah. Yes. Yeah, we do. I think we do get, like, an oxytocin probably kicks in. I think that's, like, the social bonding neurotransmitter. They all sound good. They all sound happy. But, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Like, that's the thing is, like, I think that there is selflessness, like, you know, parents, like, just instinctually without thinking about it, you know, risking their life and limb for their kids. Or, I mean, that can be not even just that relationship, but any relationship that can exist. So, yeah, I would say that there's probably selflessness. And, like, selfishness that is beneficial to everyone isn't, like, a negative, right? Like, that's the other thing, is it spins selfishness totally around and, like, kind of reframes it for me, which, I don't know, that's pretty cool. Yes, there we go. Yeah, that's exactly what, like that is the territory we're getting into, or the social like the judgment around things that are good or bad. Like, that is a huge limitation in our own lives. That's where we get those limiting beliefs, actually, from our culture. So the more that we can let go of the judgments and just experience things, see them for what they are, and work with them, the happier and the better our well-being tends to be, for sure. So the fact that you're already, like, experiencing that fluidity is really powerful, Charlie. It takes a lot of people many years to get there.
And this is what these researchers looked at. They're trying to see if there's this connection between kindness and happiness. So they measure people's subjective well-being. They divide them into two groups, the kind of very happy and the very unhappy. And then they ask them about their own instances of acting kindly, both their motivation to act kindly, how much do you like to do kind things for others, their memories of kindness, how much do you notice kind things in the world, your own actions and others, and do you actually do kind behaviors? They have this big list of kind behaviors. And so what do you find? Well, what you find is that consistently happier people are thinking about doing more kind things. They're more motivated to do them. They're having more recognition of kind acts, so they remember them more. And if you actually look at kind behaviors, they're doing more than people who are unhappy.
That's so
already
crazy.
We're getting some clues that happy people are thinking about kindness and so on. But this isn't kind of causal. What would be nice is just force these unhappy people to do kinder things and try to see, does that bump up their happiness? And so this is the kind of thing that we can do. We can first just have people start thinking about kind actions in the world. Remember kind things that you did, or remember kind things that other people have done for you. Does merely thinking about kind actions make you happier? Well, what we do is have people think about these things. We ask participants to track each act of kindness that they do. So this is like changing your reference point. You are a kind person. You've done these acts of kindness. I could do this today and say, just list for me kind acts that you've done in the last couple days. You would write them down. And then I test your happiness afterwards. You're going to report these back to me, and I'm going to make sure you did this, and then I'm going to see if it made you happier. And so here's what you find when you do this. Here's the experimental condition where you're having people think about their kind acts. And what you find is that on a pretty standard happiness score, you jump up like almost a half to a whole point. Just thinking about you're not actually doing any more kind acts, you're just thinking about the ones that you've done, and all of a sudden you're starting to feel happier, which is pretty cool. But what if we actually have you increase the number of kind actions that you actually do?
It's like you can be really lazy and benefit from kindness just by thinking about when you've been kind, right? And again, like it goes into like, this is probably triggering savoring. You're remembering that, you're re-feeling the emotions you felt when you were acting kindly. I just keep seeing like gratitude and savoring is a major theme across well-being in general.
Not just remember the stuff you're already doing and focus on it, but like actually do more stuff. Does that help us out? Well, this is what Sonia Luber-Mirsky and her colleagues have done, really have people do these acts of kindness. And so what they do is they give people the prompt over the next week or the next day, you're to perform 5 random acts of kindness, so either in one day or across a whole week. And those are the different conditions on one day, on different days, or you do no acts of kindness. I just say, write about the events of your day instead. And the question is, does this pop up happiness? And here's what we're going to find. We're going to look at changes in subjective well-being. So they measure happiness at time 1, and they see whether kindness changes it. And here's what we find. In the control condition, happiness is going down. Interestingly, if I have you do one act of kindness but on different days, we don't see much of a change. The big kind of bang for a happiness buck is making you do a bunch of acts of kindness in a single day. Why? Probably it just like forces you to like see them all and think about it all at once. But if I tell you in 1 week, just pick a day, like on Friday, just do 5 acts of kindness, all of a sudden that's gonna bump you up relative to your old.
Dude, I love this. We could do like a kindness marathon, right? Just like come up with all these random ideas for kindness, just hammer them out and get more out of it than spreading them out over our week or our month. That's kind of awesome.
Subjective well-being in a pretty substantial way. And so it seems like these acts of kindness are actually like really making us feel better. This is not the happiness of the people who receive the acts of kindness. This is just our own happiness. We should be seeking out and doing more of this stuff. And this also leads to an explanation for one of the counterintuitive effects we probably saw before, which is this other effect that we keep talking about where increased salary isn't making us that happy. We talked before about why that was because of hedonic adaptation, because we spend money on things and not experiences and things we get used to and so on. But one of them is that maybe we're not using our salary to do as many kind things for others. Maybe if we kind of combine these things, getting some money, but using that money to do something for somebody else is going to make us even happier. And this is the premise of a recent book called Happy Money, which is by the 2 psychologists Liz Dunn and Mike Norton, who've done some really, really cool work on this stuff, doing these interventions where they get people to spend money in different ways, showing that it actually makes people happier. And they tested this idea that spending money on other people was going to be really important in a very cute way. So they walk up to people on the street, they say, do you want to be in a study? People say yes. They say, okay, rate your subjective well-being. People rate it. And they say, awesome, here's $5 or here's $20. And they say, it's just yours, this cool windfall. And the only rule is that you either have to spend it on yourself. So I give you $5. The rule is you got to buy something nice for yourself sometime today. It's great. Or you have to spend it on somebody else. That's the only difference. And then you agree that I can call you later this afternoon, I can call you in a month, I can call you at different times and check how happy you are. People love this study. People are like, this is the best study ever, right? Interestingly, for the $5 condition, it turns out the modal thing that people do is to go to Starbucks and buy like some sort of chai thing, right? It also turns out that that's the modal thing you do for somebody else because you have to spend $5 on somebody else like sometime today. Easy thing to do is to get them a really delicious chai or something. Sometimes you can have exactly the same thing purchased. The question is, when they call later that day, which of the 2 sets of subjects is happier? And so here is what people predict, because they also asked people, you know, if you were in the study and I did this to you, like, and I called you, which would you be happier in? People's predictions are twofold. People predict, I'm totally going to be happier if I spend that on myself than if I spend that on somebody else, like duh, right? They also make a prediction about the money. They say, I'm going to be way happier if I spend the 20 bucks than if I spend the 5 bucks, because obviously 20 bucks is like 4 times better than the 5 bucks, right? But it turns out that what really happens is different. What really happens is you get a super strong, significant effect that the money you spend on other people makes you happier than the money you spend on yourself, which is pretty cool. The other thing you find is that it doesn't matter how much money you spend. So the folks that spend $20 on somebody else are just as happy as the folks that spend $5. It doesn't matter the amount. And again, this tells us 2 things. One is, it is the case that doing kind things with our money for other people is good, but we also don't realize that. This is another spot where we are miswanting in a bad way. Liz Dunn and her colleagues have now done a bunch of different studies on this to look at the mechanisms of this, and this is one of the most robust effects, I think, in the field of psychology right now. And one of my favorite follow-ups that she did asked 2 questions. It first asked, well, these studies were originally done at UBC, which is where Liz Dunn is a professor. You know, maybe there's just something strange about these like happy folks in Canada, like they have all this money, you know, they're happy Canadians. Like, can we see this in other cultures too? And so they ran this experiment in a bunch of other cultures. I'll tell you just about one, which is that they did this in a rural town outside of Kampala in Uganda. This also allowed them to do a second thing, which is, yeah, spending $5 on somebody else, you know, makes us happier than spending on ourselves, but like $5 is like, it's just $5, right? It's not like a real amount of money. They couldn't do in UBC studies that cost a real amount of money because like grants, and you don't have that much money to do them. But to take this same experiment and run it in Uganda, they could actually give people in that population a pretty substantial amount of money, because sadly in this town where they were running this sort of thing, $20 isn't just like, oh, I'll buy a couple of chais. Sadly, it's like, oh, I could get my family HIV medication for the month. Like, these are like real amounts of money to the people there, right? And so the question is, first, do you see the same effect across cultures? And do you see the same effect when the amount of money in question is like a real amount of money that you're not spending on yourself, that you're spending on somebody else? And what you find is that the very same magnitude of the happiness effect seems to exist across the cultures. It doesn't matter if you're just like buying somebody a chai, or you're getting their family like crucial medication for their family that you give up to have for yourself. You're still getting this same effect, where spending on others makes you happier than spending on yourself. And so it continues across cultures, and it continues across income levels to some interesting extent. And so the upshot is that it seems like acting in a way that's kind, whether it be kind of random acts of kindness that you do for people that you just remember, or that you do extra, or that involves actually spending money, is a thing that's a thing that we don't realize is going to make us happy, but even really does. And even when I ask you about the specifics of it, you don't realize it's going to help, but it does. So this should get plopped out of your miswanting and into your real wanting.
Hey. I mean, that she makes a good case, right? For being kinder. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to watch this video too, and I think we still have time, so we'll do it. But yeah, she makes a good case for just kindness. And again, like, I love this idea that, not this idea, but this like evidence-backed idea that like being kind because it boosts your own happiness is a totally legit reason to be kinder, right? It doesn't have to come, it can come from an altruistic place, but it doesn't have to, in order for you to benefit and for the people you're being kind to benefit. And that makes kindness so much more accessible. And yeah, that's really powerful. I knew some of this, but not to the extent that I just saw it. That's, yeah. And the other thing I'm getting from just this whole course in general is that it doesn't take much to, like, implementing little, like, doing the work it takes to increase our well-being isn't that intense. Like, it's as simple as a daily gratitude practice, like being kind, right? Like being kinder, like what? Like, okay, and like savoring the good stuff when it happens. Like, that's all really, really accessible. And yeah, Oh, interesting. So, yeah, so for you, money wouldn't do it, Charlie, but having something of value, whatever that is for you, and then giving that away gives you that bump. Yeah, I agree. I now agree with that too, Charlie. Like, yeah, that's what the science and the research is indicating. It's really cool. So, the next video is the same kind of idea, but about, instead of kindness, it's about social connection. So it's taking this knowledge we now have that our brains miswant things. Like, we're intuitively wanting things that don't actually bump our happiness. And now she's saying, hey, instead of miswanting X, Y, and Z, let's want some more kindness, because that actually improves your well-being. And I think she's going to do the same thing here with social connection. We're going to see why. No social things. What? But we're being social right now. And I like it. No. Oh, yes. Okay, if I were doing it. I'm sorry,
First,
Charlie.
I'll tell you about the second thing and the final thing for today that seems to make us happier than we think. And that is this phenomena of social connection.
What?
Just being around other people makes us happier than all the things we do.
Well,
to
you can
worry
keep
about our
miswanting the
problems
cool
and worry
things you
about
want.
all that stuff.
Now you know
Like,
other
it
things
seems
you
to
can
matter a
want
lot more than we
if
think.
you want to want
Here
them.
we have a wonderful Yale
That'll
example, I
increase your
think, of the
happiness.
importance of this. I think a couple of you mentioned this in your comments about kind of being socially connected, which is great. You guys didn't overlap, I don't think, with Marina Keegan, but some of you probably know her famous essay on the opposite of loneliness, which I think kind of nicely shows the power of this social connection. So she writes in one of her final YDN pieces, she says, we don't have a word for the opposite of loneliness, but if we did, I could say that that's what I want in life, what I'm grateful and thankful to have found at Yale, and what I'm scared of losing when I leave this place. And she goes on to explain this. She's like, at Yale we have we're full of sort of tiny little circles that we pull around ourselves. And she's graduating at this point, and so she says, we won't have those next year. We won't live on the same block as our friends. We won't have a bunch of group texts. She also goes like, we won't have the hat party, we won't have all this stuff. And she kind of goes through this. And she notes, this scares me, not having this, more than finding the right job or the right city or the right spouse. I'm scared of losing this web and this elusive, indefinable opposite of loneliness. What's great about this is I think Marina is hitting upon what a lot of the research is saying. It doesn't matter if you find the right job or the right city or the right spouse, but if you lose this feeling of the opposite of loneliness that we feel here so much at Yale, you are going to lose out something in terms of your own happiness. Because it turns out this wonderful thing that she talks about at Yale, this thing that we have at SELIGMAN and that we have like all through the things at Yale, can just show off all happy SELIGMAN photos, this kind of connectedness does seem to matter much more than we think. And so how do we know this? Can we actually do some studies where we look at social connection? And this is another thing that lots of positive psychologists have looked at. They've just tried to measure, again, take this insight, like, okay, let's just look at happy people and unhappy people and ask, like, what are the differences? It's not salary, it's not this stuff, but it turns out it seems, social connection. Just how much do you hang out with close people that you're close with? And so Myers has looked at this and found a bunch of things in his lovely review on this topic. He notes that, look, close ties with people and having this social connection is good for all kinds of health-related stuff. It can actually make you less vulnerable to premature death. So if I look at whether or not you're going to die, if you're an elderly person, you have more social connections, you tend not to. It can make you more likely to survive a fatal illness like cancer or heart disease and so on. And it makes you less likely to fall prey to the sorts of stressful events that mess up your life. All kinds of health consequences to social connection. But there's also all kinds of happiness consequences too, at least when you look at who's happy and who's unhappy. And this is what Ed DIENER and Marty Seligman did. They kind of divided people up into those who were happy and those who were unhappy. And then they tried to look at those people's ratings of their own quality of social relationships. And so here's what they find. There's folks who are very unhappy or very happy, so the two sides of the scale. What you find is you look at their number of close friends, very happy people have more. If you look at the number of strong family ties, very happy people have more. And even if you look at the number of romantic ties, things like marriages and stuff, very happy people have more and have better ones, right? You can also look at this if you have people rate their daily activities. Just how much time do you spend by yourself and with your friends? And when you look at that across very unhappy and very happy people, what you find is very unhappy people spend more time alone, and very happy people spend more time with family, friends, lovers, all this stuff. So merely just spending time with people can allow me to predict whether or not you're going to be happy or unhappy.
So,
but here's the question, is this really?
I was like, this would be true then, regardless of whether you're extroverted or introverted? I don't know, I
Really the
assume.
case? Can we kind of intervene on people's lives, give them more close social connections, and increase their happiness? And so this is what researchers have tried to do, not even in the context of the best sorts of social ties you might think, not even in the context of like true friendships of the kind we showed in those SELIGMAN pictures. What about kinds of interventions I can do in really strange circumstances, like a bunch of strangers around you? Can you increase your social connection with those folks, and does that increase your happiness and your positivity? So this is what Nick EPLEY and his colleagues have looked at. Nick has an awesome book called Mind-Wise about kind of how we go wrong predicting other people's minds. And he did a very fun intervention with folks who were on public transit and just had them try to increase social connection with strangers. So the experiment is you're about to hop on the train to go to work. He says, do you want to be in a study? You say yes, and he says, great. You are plopped into one of three conditions. You're either in the connection condition, which is like, I'm gonna pay you like small amount of money. I think he gives them a banana in some conditions, like not too much, but you're in this condition where I want you to make a connection. You have to sit on this train and you have to talk and have a conversation with somebody, and you have to try to make a meaningful social connection, as long as you need to, but like you need to leave here feeling like you're connected with this person. Or he says, you're in the solitude condition. Your goal is to just like enjoy solitude. A lot of people love solitude. Just be quiet, be by yourself, and just like try to enjoy it as much as possible. Or you're in a control, which is I say, go on this train and do what you would normally do on the train. You know, maybe some people are more talkative than others, and just have that as a control. And the question is, what happens to their happiness over time? He also has people predict what's going to happen, because as we've seen with this miswanting, we sometimes get this wrong. But here's what people predict in this experiment 1, when you're on a train and I tell you to do that. What people predict is probably what some of you might predict, which is that the solitude condition is the best of positivity, followed by the control, and then the connection, when you have to actually talk to somebody on the train, it's gonna make you feel weird. It's gonna be awkward, like you have to talk to that person, it's like gonna suck. But what actually happens is in fact just the opposite. The solitude condition is the lowest one. People actually reduce their positivity from when they got on the train. People don't like that. And they get a big boost in positivity when they do the connection. That's on the train, and you might say like, well, the train, you know, it's a bunch of like intellectual people on the Amtrak, and like, you know, we'll have a great conversation, like going into the city or whatever. What about like, if you kind of ask people like what's the most like, you know, stranger-filled public transport, like on the like city bus? Like you don't want to talk to people on the bus is like shorter, you don't even have that much time. Can we do the same thing there? Well, we do that in the context of what people predict. People are getting on the bus, you're like, hey, if you were in this study and I told you to connect with somebody, talk to somebody on the bus, how happy would it make you feel? And solitude condition and so on. And what you find is the same thing, maybe even a stronger effect. People think like solitude is going to be the best, it's going to be super awkward to talk with somebody on the bus. What do you actually find? Just the opposite. In fact, even the normal thing you do on the bus is pretty awful. I guess city buses are kind of bad, but you can reduce the normal badness of city buses by trying to have a connection and connect with somebody.
That's
Again,
crazy.
Even though we don't believe this is going to be the case, we absolutely think that it's going to be awkward and weird, but in fact, it just makes us happier. And so EPLEY and colleagues then went on to kind of check like what's going on. Like, well, one of the reasons people mispredict this is they think like nobody's really going to be happy if I start talking to them. People are like, you know, working and they don't want to be interrupted, and it's just going to be
someone's going to jump
awkward.
out of a window on me.
Is that really the case? What happens to the person who is talked to? You know, maybe this is a kind of sad effect. Maybe you talking to somebody on the bus are having an awesome time, but the person being talked to is just totally miserable and like wants to leave, and it's terrible for them. And so EPLEY tested that too. He set people up in a kind of fake social situation where they were kind of both subjects who came in, sort of waiting in a waiting room, kind of like a dentist's office. And then he asked this effect of being talked to. And he did that in a couple conditions. Those same ones you saw before, where he tells people, you gotta make a connection with this person in the waiting room, or you gotta be quiet, or just do what you would normally do. The second subject has no instructions. They don't know they're in a study. But he's gonna ask them later how they feel. He also did this other manipulation, which I think is cute, where he said, well, maybe there's something really weird about like being forced to talk to somebody that makes it feel better. But if you actually had a choice of whether you did it, like if you're actually going to decide to do it, it wouldn't work. So he either says, look, like this is the study, you have no choice, you just have to do it. Or he says, you know, that's a condition, you're free to choose. You could kind of do it as much as you want. Interestingly, what he finds is like everybody does it pretty much the same level, whether they have a choice or not. But what's the effect on your happiness, both for the person who's trying to connect and for the recipient? And so here's what he does. Again, here's the same finding you saw before. That's the connection condition. We're looking at bigger bars or kind of more positivity. Both whether you freely choose it or whether you have no choice, the connection condition is better than the solitude. And in the control condition, in this case, you kind of don't change, but solitude is worse. What happens to the person who's talked to? Like, they're not instructed to talk, they just kind of roll in. Is it miserable for them? No. It turns out that in the connection condition, it's better for them than their baseline. It's only in the solitude condition, and interestingly in the control condition, where people seem to feel worse. It is the case that the other people you talk to are going to be happier too, even though you don't realize that. And so the upshot is that, like, even finding social connections, not the ones we care the most about, not these deep Yale sweetmate connections, which obviously are going to increase happiness, even these random ones are going to help us out more than we think. And so this is kind of a point too, is that, like, as you leave here, talk.
So, like, this is really striking to me because I absolutely would not think that this is true. I would be like, no. Like, I'm not, like, me reaching out to somebody on a public transportation to connect with them is not going to go well. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to decrease my well-being. Apparently that's not true for both, like me and the poor person I target, right? But I'm wondering if this is true because, or if the reason why kindness is so beneficial to us is because it's also you're making a connection with someone, right? Like, it's not like you're doing a kind act and you exactly. Like, okay, you got it. I don't need to keep talking.
Talk to the people on the street. Talk to the people that are around you.
I?
It will make you and them happier than you expect. And so the final thing we'll talk about is why this is, like, what's going on in the context of social connection that's making us so much happier. And what researchers are finding is that just the act of being with somebody seems to affect the normal happiness processes and evaluative processes that we have. Simply by being around other people, we're taking in information in the world in a very different way. And this is what Erica Boothby and her colleagues have studied. This is some work by Margaret Clark, who's the head of Trumbull College here and a professor in the psychology department. And she just asked if the act of being around somebody can change your very subjective experience of good and bad events in the world. And the simple event she chose is just eating some chocolate. So you're going to come into a study, and it's an awesome study. You're going to be tasting different delicious chocolates and just kind of giving your ratings of them. You also might be looking at different beautiful artwork and giving your ratings of that. And you happen to come in with another subject. So you come in and there's another subject there. You say, oh, hi, great. But it turns out that the other person is not really a subject. They're just a confederate in the study. You don't know that. You just sit down, and you're then assigned to one of two conditions. You're going to eat this tasty chocolate, and you're either going to do it at the same time as the other person. So I pull out of a hat and I say, you guys get to go together. You're both going to do chocolate first. Or you do it at a different time. I say, subject, you're going to do chocolate first, but the other person's going to do art. So you're both doing this activity. You're both looking at something that you think is probably pleasant. But in one case, you're doing the same thing at the same time. In the other case, you're doing something different. Subjects aren't instructed to talk to each other. In fact, they're kind of doing this silently, kind of behind a barrier. They just know that somebody else is there doing the same thing. And the question is, does this affect your enjoyment of things? And here's what Boothby and colleagues find. If you measure how much people like the chocolate in the shared experience, they end up liking the chocolate more, a whole point on the chocolate liking scale. And if you ask other things like the flavorfulness of the chocolate, kind of how rich the experience is, you get the same sort of effect. Where doing it with somebody else is making these things better. This is crazy. The same exact chocolate tastes more delicious if you just happen to be in the same room as somebody who's tasting the same
And this is true for
chocolate.
extroverts as well as introverts, right? Like, that's where my mind is getting blown.
Imagine
like,
all the
this is pretty
richness of
universally
watching
true.
Netflix with your sweetmates, or going to the movies with your sweetmates, or going to an art show with your sweetmates, or eating the delicious SELIGMAN dining hall food with your friends. All of a sudden, just being around somebody is making these good experiences even better. And so we think that that might be kind of a mechanism of why social connection is doing all of its work. It's just making the richness of life even richer, among other sorts of things that it's doing.
So we basically get rewarded for being socially connected. And that makes sense because evolutionarily speaking, that's how our species survived, right? We partnered together. We are a social species, so it makes sense that we're rewarded for being social. Oh no. Yes, absolutely, Charlie. They are still highly social. It's just with less they're more selective in the people that they let in. Go buy Overwatch. No! I don't have space in my life for another game, another distraction. But one of these days I will. One of these days. I just got a lot's going on. A lot's going on. I remembered to turn down the volume before turning the music back on. Oh, I wanted to show you guys something that was really cool. Where did I find that? Okay, so more kindness, more social connection. Done, 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 and done. I want them to test. No, it can't hurt. Don't let it hurt. No. I want them to test, like, whether or not, like, virtual, like, doing something with somebody virtually also bumps the experience. Like, if I was eating chocolate and you were eating chocolate, or we're, like, co-watching something together, that gives you this social connection boost. I hope so. That would make life so much easier. All right, so I'm gonna show you a little video. I think it's a video. Maybe not. Yes. So I just saw this on the Positive News Network that I follow, and basically it says that, like, every year on May 5th, the Netherlands celebrates the country's liberation from the Nazis. And this year there weren't any fireworks because of the pandemic, but a group did do a drone show. A drone show that was in honor of all the healthcare workers that are working really tirelessly. So let me just show you that, which I think I'm doing right now. Yes, I am. Sweet. Yeah, I think, Charlie, like, when they do the research, they'll find that it's true, right? Like, they're gonna find, yeah, this is where, like, virtual interaction works to build social connection. This is maybe the times where it doesn't. Yeah, because I think, like, one of the reasons why for a lot of people virtual stuff doesn't feel like it works as well is because of the social comparison trap, right? Like, we're seeing all of these different people living these wonderful lives online, and then we're like, oh, I don't look like that, or oh, I haven't gotten to buy that, and it triggers all of our miswanting. So I don't know. I'm obviously fascinated by it, though. Okay, but we want to watch it where I can expand it. Here we go. Drone show after the lame commercial. All right, there we go. No, we still have to watch a lame commercial because you're cooler online. Well, you're really cool online, so you're gonna be cool in person. So I don't know. I don't know. Oh, here we go. No. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Is it starting yet? I haven't watched it. Why? Oh my god, it's 16 minutes long. We aren't gonna watch it all, but they did a drone show. And let's see, where does it? And I've never seen a drone show, but it looks amazing. And they do, where is it? There it is! They do a big old heart. Can you guys see it? Can you see it? It's a 3D heart in the sky. I can't, like, it has to be a computer program, right? Like, it's not individual people flying each drone. Like, it has to be an algorithm or something driving them all. Just thought it was so cool. Yeah, I wonder, like, if our brains release more of the feel-good chemicals. Like, I think physical touch releases it. And so maybe we're missing out on some of that online. Oh, that is such a... Oh, and they can do different colors. Go away, advertisement. Gosh. All right, Charlie, I'm gonna look at Overwatch. You're welcome. Just, no, I can't type in anything. What does it look like? What? This is bad news. Bad news. It does look fun. Yes, it does look fun. Oh my god, I would get so motion sick. One of these days, the world's gonna cure motion sickness and I will once again be able to live fully. You know, go on boats, play Overwatch, travel. Wow, even just watching it when it spins around is too much for me. Ah! Ah! All right. Oh, you guys! Yay! What else? What else? Anything you guys want me to celebrate? Oh, I love hearing about, like, people being passionate about stuff excites me for sure. What else do I have to share? I don't know. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I'm gonna go eat lunch. What are you guys gonna do? Too bad you're, but being good at it doesn't matter as long as you're having fun, right? Like, that's partly with League of Legends. I've been playing it for I don't know, 7 years. I am not good. I am not very good at all. But I'm in a group of friends that want to get better and better and better, and I don't know, like, it kills it a little bit for me. Like, I like to improve, but too much makes it unfun. You're gonna go, Scott. Oh, Scott, just, I don't know. Can you get in your car and drive out here? We'll give you a room. Work! Boo! See, it's the pretending that makes keeping it all together so much harder. Like, having to hide. Perhaps you're like, I hope so. I'm gonna be super sad if that can't happen. I think it's far enough out that hopefully as our country opens up, it doesn't bring it all the sickness back and we can actually travel again. That'd be lovely.